Welcome everyone to Life Beyond 6 Feet. I'm Damien from RKB Paranormal, and this week I have a very special guest all the way from the United Kingdom. I have Mr. Nick Pease. Nick, welcome to Life Beyond 6 Feet.
Thanks so much, Damien. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Now, when you first reached out to me in January, I had no clue like who you were, never heard of you, and I kind of did a little bit of research, not much, because I wanted to kind of see who I was getting ready to talk to, and I didn't realize you were actually in the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
That's
Well, nowadays it doesn't make much difference because with Zooms and things like we're doing now,
right,
people are just communicating right across the world. It can make things complicated with time differences, but
right.
it's good we're connected.
Right. So, and you're my first overseas interview. I think that's really
Oh, wow.
exciting for me. So,
That's
so,
great.
so like I've explained to you, we're just going to kind of dive right in. Now, you say you're a spiritual medium. So for people who may not know exactly what that is, what would your definition of a spiritual medium be?
Somebody who can communicate and be open to the influence of spirit beings. It's something that came quite naturally to me when I was a very young child, aged about 4 or 5. I had my first experiences of hearing spirits, and then later in my teens, I started to see spirits as well. And I guess that's what started me on my lifelong quest to find out more about exactly what the nature of human existence is all about, why there are other dimensions, why can people pick up on them, kind of what's it all about, really, because I wasn't getting enough answers from orthodox avenues.
Right.
And I developed my talents. So, a spiritual medium, in my, not until I was in my 20s, having gone through and got a degree in philosophy and all the rest of it, I sat in circle at the Spiritualist Association of Great Britain, which is the sort of headquarters of the spiritualist movement, to develop myself as a spiritual medium and learn the very rigid discipline of how to protect yourself, because there
Hmm.
are unenlightened spirits out there as well.
Right.
How to meditate properly so that you really open yourself up to the influences. Um, I should say, Damien, I don't actually call myself a spiritualist purely because I find labels divide us.
Right.
The minute you say you're this or that, people are going to take offense, or people are going to categorize you as this or that or the other.
Right.
I just don't adhere to any one uh, kind of course of thinking, or I keep myself very open. I like to think of myself as a free thinker, a free individual spirit. I'm still learning, as we all are, on our lifetime's quest. And so I keep that very much as a sort of free thinker. I think we're all spiritual individuals trying to find our way in this life. I personally find that the minute we start kind of claiming that we're part of this or that movement or whatever, we ostracize ourselves from so much else. And it seems to cause so much division in this world, and there's so much hatred
Hmm.
based purely on the fact that you're not in my club or you don't wear the same badge or whatever it is. And I find that very, very sad, because we're all one and the same. So a spiritual medium is simply somebody who has developed their abilities, if you like, to pick up on spiritual entities, and be able to receive messages from the spirit world and communicate with the spirit world. And if you take it seriously, if you want to develop as a spiritual medium, I believe it is a serious subject, because you do need, as I said earlier, you do need to protect yourself, because
Hmm.
there are all kinds of things out there. I don't like to call it evil or anything like that. Most of the spirit world, and the ones who will want to come through to you, will come with immense love and understanding and compassion and toleration, all the wonderful attributes that we wish were more evident in this
Right.
world now. um, but a spiritual medium tries to develop, and the reason for doing that is simply to try and use those abilities for good. In other words, maybe to try and heal people, maybe to bring enlightenment to others, to bring comfort to those who've been bereaved. It's not dabbling with the occult or anything like that. It's got nothing to do with that. Those are the sort of things that are just put up by people as barriers to try and control people, to try and keep them in subjugation, and try and say, well, you shouldn't do this or you shouldn't do that because otherwise you'll burn in hell. It's
Right.
absolute nonsense, complete. I could use stronger words. There is nothing wrong with it whatsoever. Spirits come with love, always with love, and what could possibly be wrong with that? So a spiritual medium is simply somebody who has recognized from an early age that these things do exist. It's not just all about us. It's not just all about the here and now. There are other dimensions to life, and it's much, much bigger than we even know today. And I don't pretend to have half the answers.
Right.
But I went on that quest, and I'm continuing to be on that quest because it fascinates me. And through no desire of my own, when I was a young kid, I became very aware that these things existed. So it was natural for me to pursue it and find out more. That's
Right.
it in a
Right. So now you said you first experienced this at a young age, around 4 or 5 years old.
yeah.
Now, any kid would find that absolutely terrifying. To
And I
hear to hear something that you're not seeing, or to see somebody that's not nobody else sees. So how did you react when that first happened to you?
That's spot on, Damien. Absolutely terrified. It terrified the life out of me. I mean, the thing is, once you have those experiences, they are. I mean, you cannot be mistaken. It's. You are hearing, and later I was seeing proper spirit forms, and it is a very profound experience. When I was very young, yeah, absolutely, it was very frightening. But as I started to grow up and become more used to it, I suppose, and it just became a regular occurrence, I grew accustomed to it and accepted it. And when I realized they never came to harm me, they never came to judge me, they never came to do anything unpleasant to me, and actually they were coming with love and understanding and trying to help me in my life and get me to help others, as it were,
Right.
then I accepted it. But what I always found fascinating is from a young age, because I had a questioning mind, this just reinforced in me the fact that we are part of something much, much bigger. That life isn't all about just our everyday existence. We don't just wake up in the morning, work, go to sleep, and then eventually die. Yes, that will happen to all of us, but actually there has to be a greater purpose to life. And this is what set me on the path to finding out more. I didn't find enough answers I still don't, from religion, politics, science, whatever it might be. I take a great interest in them, obviously, but I don't find they give enough answers. They tend to be very closed books, literally. And I wanted to discover more, because it was clear that there was more. If you're having these experiences, it's very clear that there are other dimensions out there. And I wanted to find out, well, what is the nature of existence? Why are we here? What's it all about? If we go on to something bigger and greater, what's that about? What is that journey? And what implications does that have for our earthly life? So many, many questions. And yeah, from being initially frightened, as you rightly say, I grew very accustomed to it and welcomed it. And then, of course, later, when you start to sit in circle and everything, you actually welcome it, and you are deliberately there with a group of people being guided by, in my case, I'm going back well over 30 years, by one of the best mediums of the day. And you're being guided to know how to protect yourself, how to develop, how to meditate properly, etc., and control that situation so that only good can come out of it. But I'm still on that quest. I still want to know more about what this is all about, because it seems to that the everyday is pretty trivial. I look around the world and see some pretty terrible things happening as well. I think we've lost our way terribly. I think we've lost a great deal of the spirituality that we had and which was understood by the ancient cultures and still is today by them, although many of them had it literally beaten out of them. Uh, and I just think I've always had that feeling that there has to be more to this life than just the everyday. There has to be purpose to it. And I think once you start to embrace that idea that we are spirits in the material world,
Hmm.
we come from spirit, we are spirit, we will return to spirit. It gives that perspective to life, and you think, well, okay, that has implications on how I probably should be living my life, how I interact with the people on the planet itself, the animals, everything. It has a very, very wide perspective to it. So yeah, from as you rightly say, from being terrified to being now extremely comfortable with it.
Hmm.
That's not to say that there can be instances where you come up against a spirit entity in surprising situations that
Hmm.
can sort of take you back a bit, but then you realize, no, I'm okay. I'll deal with this situation. And
Right.
as I say, most of them come through with love and real compassion, and it's beautiful.
Right. So, as you got older and you learned more about this stuff, like when did you kind of decide that's something it's something you wanted to kind of pursue because it really intrigued you? Like when did you kind of decide I want to know more about this?
Um, I started as a very annoying questioning child to ask all sorts of questions of my dad. Um, so starting at that point, I mean, around the time that I was first having my first spirit experiences at age 4 or 5, and beginning to recognize there must be more to this world than meets the eye. I guess a year or two later, I remember standing outside, probably aged about 6, outside our house with my dad looking up at the stars and asking him, because I'd heard about this concept of infinity. And I said to him, well, what does that mean exactly? I'm looking up at the stars. Where do they end? Where how can something not have a beginning or an end? And of course, he couldn't answer me. And, he gave me the best answer he could at the time. But I always had that sort of, well, what are we part of? And as I started to grow up in my teens, as I say, I started to see spirits. And then I started to have all kinds of strange experiences as well, where I might have knowledge of something in advance of it happening. Spirituality doesn't have anything to do with fortune telling, but nevertheless, certain things can be seen. Let's
Hmm.
put it that. Um, but I wanted to subject all this to analysis. I think skepticism is very healthy. And so I went to university and studied philosophy. There is no more forensic, analytical, skeptical study than philosophy. It puts everything under the microscope to try and unearth what is the real nature of existence. Is there a God? What are we made of? We build our world from our 5 senses, yet we know that the animal kingdom has senses far more heightened than ours, and they interact with the world on a completely different level. So all these things start to make you think, hang on a minute, there's a different way of looking at this life
Right.
than just the human perspective. So I studied philosophy. Then after that, I joined a circle at the SAGB in London, which is a fantastic place where you really learn. Although I was already had what some people would call gifts, although I don't view it like that because everybody has that gift. It's just a question of whether you want to develop them or not. But at the SAGB, I developed my mediumistic gifts so that I was even more able to communicate and receive spirit influence. Um, so yeah, the seeds were sown very early, Damien, when I was an annoying, questioning young kid. Always say, "Well, why? Well, you will believe this. No, why? Or that such and such happened. It's written down here. No, how? Why? What?" it's, but I still believe that. I think it's very positive to be skeptical and to ask questions and
Right.
not just accept things as they are presented. And it's something I almost joke with people when I say, yeah, over my lifetime, of not just getting a degree in philosophy, but developing as a spiritual medium. I've studied the world's religions. I take a great interest in scientific discoveries, particularly as they relate to energetic
Hmm.
discoveries, because everything, as we know, Einstein uh, proved it, is made up of energy. You cannot destroy energy, which is why spirits still exist, because they are made up of energy. All these things absolutely fascinate me. But when I accumulate all this sort of knowledge and lifetime experience, I still say to people, please don't believe a single word I say. Find your own truth.
Hmm.
I'm never going to preach to people or stand up and say, well, you should believe this just because I'm telling you or whatever. And I'm the first to accept that unless you have a spirit experience for yourself, you should be skeptical. You should just not accept it because some people say, well, I've seen or heard these things. I know it's more real to me than 2 + 2 = 4. It's
Hmm.
absolutely nailed on fact. But I just wish more people could have that experience, because it wouldn't help them to acknowledge that spirit as a reality, which, and you may well be asking me about my book as we go in further into this, but that's exactly why I wrote my book, Revelation, because it's a thriller. So you can read it as a thriller, but it has some very deep, thought-provoking questions posed within it, because the whole tenet of the book is, what if a device could be invented which could prove scientifically 100% that life after death is a fact?
Hmm.
And in the book, that's the whole point, that how would people react to that? Now, to me, it would be absolutely fantastic if somebody could. I know it's a reality. Spiritual mediums know it's a reality. Millions of people around the planet who've had those experiences, many of them downright skeptical to start with, will tell you that, yeah, it's real. The thousands and thousands of people who've had near-death experiences or have died on the operating table or whatever, and had those experiences and come back and said, yeah, it really is a fact, and that dying is like just stepping into another room. It's not like heaven and hell or anything else. So how would people react? And the point of the book is, it wouldn't just be accepted and plain sailing. There would be vested interest, be they political, religious, whatever, scientific, whatever it might be, who would see a device like Revelation as a threat to their status quo. And in the book, they try to shut it down and its inventors. They try to destroy it. And that's when the book becomes a thrilling roller coaster of events, whilst the inventors try to escape to bring their incredible invention into the public domain. But that's why it poses some deep, deep questions, because whilst we're talking here about these things, it really does touch upon the fact that if you could prove it scientifically that life after death is a fact, how would the world react? It's quite a question, because
Hmm.
you and I might accept it and love it and welcome it. Believe me, there would be a lot of people who would find it very threatening,
Hmm.
almost.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It's like, I don't know. It's like anything that happens that disturbs people's status quo. A lot of people would want to shut it down. So I find these things fascinating. I bring my lifetime's experience to bear and all my knowledge in the book itself, but hopefully posing a lot of thought-provoking questions as well.
Right. And something like that, I think would be, like you said, accepted by a lot of people. But then a lot, then you have these other people that would want to shut it down and say all this negativity about it. So speaking of your book, like when did you sit down and decide you wanted to write this book?
Um, well, it came to me. It was spirit given. The whole thing was quite extraordinary. How it happened was, I had the idea for writing a book at some time, and I knew I didn't want to just write another medium's experience or something like that. There are countless of those on the market.
Hmm.
Whereas a spiritual thriller, which is what Revelation is, I believe even now is almost unique. I've never come across anything which embraces and combines the elements of spirituality, philosophy, science, religion, and puts it into a thriller format. And I wanted to have that idea of, as a medium who knows and understands the reality of spirit existence, I did have suddenly had this thought, well, hang on a minute. What if somebody could invent a machine, which in my book is called Revelation, which could 100% prove it to be a fact? So I had the idea and I sat down and I wrote it. I literally used a notepad. I wasn't on a computer or anything. I started to write and I literally, Damien, I couldn't keep up. It was like spirit given. I was just writing so fast. I had the whole thing written within a week.
Oh, wow.
Yes, yeah. After that, I did go back and obviously you edit it like mad. You flesh out the characters a bit. You introduce one or two other elements, etc. But essentially, the main elements of the book, the whole story, was a week's work, which was incredibly fast. But as I say, I couldn't keep up. I realised it was spirit inspired. And within the book, although, as I say, you could read it just as a thriller, it's a very quick, easy read. I think it's 267 pages, short chapters, fast, a lot of dialogue, fun characters. There's humor, there's romance, some funny characters as well, all kinds of things, but also a lot of action because you've got these people trying to close down Revelation and its inventor. So you could read it like that as just a thriller at top line value.
Right.
But underneath it, within there, there's an awful lot of spiritual philosophy, science, religion, all the rest of it that really poses deep questions that make people think, you know what, I've always thought that. I've always wondered that, or whatever it might be. And here it is in a book telling me these things. So it is not science fiction. The book is not science fiction at all. All the science within it, everything quoted, and it's not a heavy read. I just say that any references made are of the science of the day, and everything is very, very real. It could happen, and it literally could. I mean, Damien, tomorrow, I wouldn't be surprised if scientists suddenly said, yeah, we have come up with a device called Revelation or whatever they're going to call it that can prove. I mean, that these things happen every day. It may not happen in my lifetime. Be wonderful if it did, but I believe one day something like that will happen. And like most of the great scientific developments, it will probably happen by accident, as it does in my book. If people read my book, they'll find out how it happens. Many of the world's greatest scientific achievements, if you think about it, have happened quite by accident. And the reason I think it might well happen is because scientists, now that we know that everything in the universe is made up of energy, scientists are more and more beginning to investigate the composition of things, what this energy means, what it means to us, etc. And the fact that spirit exists on an energetic level, the more you're starting to investigate energy and trying to reveal it, the closer scientists will come to revealing other dimensions. And an analogy I often use, in fact, I use it in the book, is if you have a television in your room at the moment, or in my room from where I'm speaking, it's switched off. But if we switch on the television, the screen will be filled with vision. There will be, you'll hear the sound, etc. If we switch it off, it goes silent again. Doesn't mean the TV waves aren't still in the room. They are. Same with the radio. The radio waves are still in the room. If the medium is switched on or off, you can receive them. If the medium is switched off, you won't receive them. And that analogy holds true with how I approach the existence of spirit. There are so many things round and about us that we don't necessarily see or sense with our very limited five senses. Doesn't mean they're not there. They are. You think of X-rays, gamma rays, whatever you might like to think of. These things exist. They are out there. And television waves, literally right around the world.
Right.
And I think more and more scientists start to look into the nature of energy, and the different frequencies and levels it, because again, Einstein said everything is vibrating at different frequencies, and those like myself who've developed as a spiritual medium understand this, that spirits have a very high frequency, whereas the earth vibration is actually quite dense, quite low, which is why spirit communication can actually be quite tricky, particularly in this day and age where through wars and strife and the immense problems we've created for ourselves on this planet, and indeed what we're doing to the planet itself, has created a very dense atmosphere around us. And it makes it harder and harder for spirit communication to take place. But with energy exploration, I think this could well lead us one day, as I say, maybe in not my lifetime, but there we are. That's not important. Could lead us to the discovery of other dimensions, and that's going to be fascinating, because spirit isn't just one dimension, as you probably know. There are many dimensions to the spirit world, but that's a massive subject in itself as well.
Right. And now this was your first book, correct?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
And so just some of the reviews for your very first book,
Yeah.
I dug into this. It says fast-paced turner from the start, brilliant and thought-provoking, a gripping read right from the start, an excellent read, amazing concept. And I read several that said it was a great page turner. So for the a first book, that's a lot of like badass reviews for your very first book.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it is. Yeah, I'm very pleased with the reviews, and it's a pleasure to receive them. I mean, I should say, Damien, I am actually a writer by trade. I'm an advertising copywriter,
okay,
uh, which is my day job, and which keeps me very busy. I'm always writing to deadlines, always, creating new ideas and all the rest of it. So writing is my trade, but it is my first book that I've ever written. I've written ads, from television commercials down to whatever, press ads, a lot digitally now as well, and used to seeing my words in print and reaching huge audiences. But this is the first time I've actually sat down and written a book as
right.
such. I've always kind of wanted to write it, but I guess because of the way I've developed over my lifetime and added the kind of knowledge I have to myself, and the experiences I've had, quite extraordinary experiences sometimes with spirit beings. I wanted to use that because, I'm a great believer. Sorry, my other phone's going, but we'll just ignore it. Sorry, I'm going to switch it off. Okay, sorry.
You're good.
Oh, good afternoon, Nick. This is Lynn, publishers to the NHS. We're looking for one hypnotherapist to appear in our brochure, because unfortunately there's a very long waiting list now with the NHS.
Sorry, Damien, are you able to edit that out?
I'm gonna leave it in, man. That's what I was saying. I don't edit anything, so stuff like that. Stuff like that.
This is the real world.
It does. It makes
the real world.
It makes it more entertaining. So
yeah, the real world where things happen like that.
Exactly.
Oh dear. No, but the reason for writing the book came about purely because I wanted to use all that knowledge and experience to put it out there, and yeah, you've just read some of the reviews which say it's really thought provoking, and that's exactly what I wanted to do. But also, because I'm a great believer in trying to spread kind of peace, love, and happiness into the world, at the risk of sounding like an aging hippie, but that's why I wanted to write the book. And without giving anything away, it has a beautifully life-affirming conclusion, which has often moved people to tears. I've heard people say, really, but tears of happiness, that they really feel uplifted and hopeful at the end of it, which is, I guess, the kind of message I wanted to give, because, as I say, you look around the world, there's a lot that can make us feel a bit dark at the moment. with the sort of stuff that's going on out there. Equally, there's a lot of good out there, but I wanted to focus on the good and just say, let's be optimistic. Let's say we can solve our problems. Personally, I think that can only come from rediscovering some of the kind of old type spirituality that, as I mentioned, the ancient cultures understood. I don't think the modern approaches to that, and politics has failed us. All kinds of things have failed us terribly in finding a way of unifying people. Because some people might say, well, I've already got that in my faith or whatever it might be. But it doesn't go far enough, and it closes off so much to you, particularly those faiths that say, oh, you shouldn't be touching spirituality or, allowing communication with spirits because it's wrong. Who are they to tell us that it's wrong? It is not wrong at all. The ancient cultures all understood that and lived close to nature because of it. They talked about looking after Mother Earth. They never took out of Mother Earth more than they could put back in. They weren't perfect, as they would be the first to admit, but that kind of spirituality that they exercised was beautiful in many ways, and looking after the animals, and yeah, they communed with spirits because they found it perfectly natural. And as I will repeat again, when spirits come through, they come with love, compassion, toleration, understanding, healing. What can possibly be wrong with that? If you're going to tell me that that is the work of the devil, then I'm going to ask you to go and look in the mirror and say, hang on a minute, maybe my system of beliefs or whatever it might be is actually the one that needs to be challenged, because I'm talking about peace, love, and happiness.
Right.
And I'm never going to deviate from that because I've experienced it for myself. I can see the benefits that it brings, and I wish the world would wake up to it. And sadly, at the moment, we have very powerful regimes which have no spirituality whatever within themselves. They stamp it out wherever they can find it. And they are gaining greater power, and they are trying to suppress people, suppress thought, suppress liberty, suppress freedom of thought. And this has to be opposed, and has people have to stand up, as I will always stand up and say, I'm sorry, that's not good. I want to embrace a genuine spirituality of love, and of where we all recognize that we are all part of the same spiritual family. And once we do that, and we get rid of labels, be they political, be they religion-based, whatever they may be, and just accept that we are spirits in the material world, we're all the same. When we die, we will not take our possessions with us, or our ideologies or anything like that. We're spirits now. We come from spirit. We'll return to spirit. And when we are divested of all that earthly sort of stuff, hopefully we'll have learned lessons and take those back into the spirit world to continue to grow in our spirit dimensions. But at the moment, I just hope that the world gets a wake-up call and begins to rediscover that, because there is so much that is deviating us from living as one, living in harmony, showing more compassion to one another, and that kind of thing. So yeah, that's why I wrote the book, really, is just to hopefully be a thought provoker, as you've read some of the reviews that say exactly that. Yeah.
Right. And then, so now that you actually put pen to paper, like literally, and wrote this book, is there plans for another one, or plans for different books? What's the future look like as far as your writing?
Yeah, I've got 2 or 3 other ideas. I think I will always write from a spiritual point of view.
Mm-hmm.
So although I'll always couch it in a novel format. So Revelation is a thriller, for example. I think whatever I would write would always be from the point of view of, a very readable, very fast-moving, thrilling or otherwise book. So it won't just be factual, because the temptation to just go and regurgitate everything I've learned in my life. Many mediums and philosophers and others have done that, and I don't think I'll do that. I could, but I don't think I will. I think it will be something else. I'm fascinated by some of the other spiritual subjects that I have encountered in my life. The whole concept of reincarnation, for example, fascinates me, and I've got one or two ideas to do with that would make a fascinating book. But there are many themes that I could use, and I think hopefully I'll get round to it quite soon. Once I start fast, but it's just making sure it's the idea I really want to do.
Right. All right. So we're gonna turn a little bit here. So
Yep.
as a medium, just in general, has, say, a paranormal investigator or team ever approached you to join them to kind of help them out on an investigation?
Yeah, and I have done it in the past. I tend not to put myself out there as the kind of medium that seeks that, purely for this reason, because as I said earlier, unenlightened beings, unenlightened entities do exist. They can cause mischief. We all know about things like poltergeists. As I say, I don't like to talk about evil, but there are entities which will attach to you if they can, if they see your light and they want to. They are earthbound, and they will try to attach to you, cause mischief or whatever it might be. And I've seen that happen. And I have gone to places with people, as I say, in the past. I tend not to seek them out, purely because you can put yourself in the path. I won't call it danger, but in the path of unfortunate things, perhaps either happening to you or you drawing unenlightened beings around yourself, which I don't want to do. So I do it purely from a perspective of it's my own choice.
Right.
Happens, Damien. And I know I've told people this before, but only about 20 miles from where I live, there is an incredible old manor house, which is meant to be reportedly one of the most haunted places in the United Kingdom. And if you know anything about the United Kingdom, you'll know that's saying something, because we've certainly got our fair share of haunted manors and castles and you name it, and just general places. It has an extraordinary story. It's set in vast grounds with a lake and everything. And it was never finished. One day, the workers all just vanished, leaving all their tools and everything, and nobody's ever really found out why. You can still visit it today. I believe it's a National Trust property. And I have been asked to go there because people do go on ghost hunts there, as it were, and they like to go at night. There's no electricity there, so there's no light or anything. It's very isolated, very dark. Looks like something out of a kind of Agatha Christie whodunit. It's that kind of imposing manor house. And there are people have seen the most extraordinary things there, heard things. The chapel there is meant to be extremely haunted, for want of a better expression. I have been there in the daylight, and not knowing anything about the history of the place, I didn't want to go anywhere near the lake because I could just feel a lot of dark energy around it. I later found out, when I looked into it, as to why did I feel that way, that during the Second World War, a whole number of, I believe they were Canadian soldiers who were on a training exercise on the lake, drowned in that lake because of the exercise went wrong. It's a huge lake, very, very cold and deep. And that's the kind of thing. But there's also spirit entities going back even older than that, because it's a very, very old mansion, as I say, in the chapel and in some of the other rooms. And it is not a place I would choose to go at sort of 2 o'clock in the morning or something, as the ghost hunters and paranormal people do. I totally respect them. I understand why they want to do it, and I think it's very valid, because they're trying to do what revelation does, is trying to prove the existence of life after death. For me, it's already a reality. And although I have learned as a medium how to protect myself, I don't deliberately put myself in the path of situations like that. And if you go out on paranormal hunts and things, which I think it can be great fun to do, just be careful. That's all I'd ever say to anybody. Just always ask for protection. Hopefully those who do it know how to protect themselves fully, because you won't even know. Many people won't even know if they've picked something up, if they've picked up an entity or something negative or a mischievous entity, and then 2 weeks later they're involved in a car crash or something, and they don't understand why. These things are very real. These things are very real. I do find it fascinating, and I'm not against it at all, because, as I say, these people are trying to prove the existence of life after death, which is wonderful. And I think it'd be amazing if they managed to do it. And people on paranormal expeditions do have the most remarkable experiences, and they write about them, and you hear about them, and people often talk to me about them when they know I'm a spiritual medium and everything. And I think, well, good for you if you can give people more proof or get people asking more questions. That's great. It's purely personal choice, Damien. I won't do it myself now. I have done it in the past, and I remember one particular situation where it was in a castle, funnily enough, and there was some very dark energy there. Obviously there'd been a lot of bad things that had gone on, particularly in the dungeons in that castle. And I thought at that time, this was way after I developed as a spiritual medium, and I thought, no, you know what, this isn't good for me. This, what am I actually gaining by doing this? So I decided best to keep myself in the light, as it were, and so I withdraw from it. And part of that is because you'll often find that if you go to so-called haunted places, the likes of old castles, churches, manor houses, whatever it might be, that have a real rich history, often the spirit beings who you may encounter there are earthbound, in the sense that they passed in tragic or traumatic circumstances, and therefore they're still very bound to the earth, but there is dark energy around because they still carry that trauma or that anger or that distress or whatever it might be. And they might try and cling to you as a way of trying to get them back to earth or wherever, whereas in fact they need to be released into the light, and that's a different subject in itself, which is where we get into all kinds of other avenues. So, long answer to a short answer, in a way of it's something I have done, but I don't seek out now.
I got you. So as we wrap this up, earlier in the interview, you mentioned there's been, there are times that kind of, when you experience something or hear or see a spirit, it kind of throws you back a little bit. So what's, in your opinion, probably been what's the one experience that's probably scared you the most, where
Uh,
you just really shook you up?
Yeah, there's good and bad to it, because when I say it can take you back, it's just a surprise, because you just know that you're in the presence of a spirit rather than a live human being, as it were. Sometimes they can look absolutely human, and you're a bit taken aback, because you think, gosh, particularly if it's somebody who you've known who's passed over. And that happened to me. I had the spirit of a dear musician friend standing by my bed not that long ago, and you're just surprised when it happens. But it was wonderful, because she was a very beautiful woman. I reached out to try and take her hand, and I just felt immense joy. I was fully wide awake, but in that moment, she disappeared. But it was one of the most wonderful, profound, and uplifting experiences of my life. But to answer your original question, there have been times where I have seen spirit entities, and they don't always come through in recognizable human form. If they're dark energy, you can see something that can actually be much bigger, much larger than a human being. I've seen one, and again, it was in my bedroom, that literally almost filled the whole room. And I just saw this cloud of energy, but a face within it as well. And it was a very ugly, unpleasant face. And that wasn't nice at all. And it can just take you back. I protect myself. I know how to get rid of them. So I'm okay about it. But it just shows that there are those kind of things around, and if they see your light, they will try and attach themselves to you or come through for whatever reason. But purely from the size and the ugliness of the entity, that did take me back. Because if you could imagine waking up and you're fully awake, you're fully awake, but seeing that in your room in the middle of the night is let's call it disturbing. No, to me, no more than that, but it is, and I can imagine to many people that would frighten the hell out of them. But as I say, it's something that I don't seek out, but you can't help. But if you are open to these things, you will have those experiences, and a lot of negative, unenlightened entities do not look pleasant. I'll put it that way. They they can come in all kinds of different shapes and sizes. They can look very ugly. You just have to deal with that if that happens. Thankfully, it doesn't happen to me too often, but I'm aware that it's a possibility. Again, one of the reasons I don't seek out spirits in so-called haunted places necessarily, because you never know quite what you're going to come across. There's dark energy there, so best avoided. To me, to others, I'm very happy for them if they want to investigate, but I just hope they protect themselves.
Right. All right. So, final question I got for you.
Yeah.
Somebody is just now discovering they have the abilities that you do. What advice would you give them to kind of, wouldn't say accept it, but kind of be okay with it? Because some people, like you said, are just kind of so turned off by it, they just kind of put it in the back of their mind and they just forget about it. What advice would you give them to be okay with it and to accept it?
Well, I think the first thing is, do you want to accept it? Do you want to develop it? If you don't, then close it down, avoid it, ask for whatever you want in terms of protection, but just close it down if it would worry you that much. But for those people who recognize they have some kind of, we all have a gift, we all do it, just is a question of whether you want to develop it or not. Then I would say very strongly, do so within a controlled environment. Don't just leave it to yourself. Go and sit in circle with a recognized medium. Learn how to protect yourself properly, how to meditate properly, because we can all meditate, but proper channeled meditation where and you develop yourself so that when you're having genuine spirit communication, and you can sort out the rest and not accept it. That can only come over time. Developing in a controlled environment with good guides and helpers who will show you the way, teach you how to protect yourself, how to meditate properly, how to open yourself up properly, how to close yourself down properly, how to filter out everything, and only accept what you want to accept if you want to accept it. If you don't want to go that route or whatever, that's fine. But that would be my advice: is not to just dabble in it, because if you do, you are leaving yourself open, and all kinds of things can say, "Hurrah! I can see his light. I'm
Right.
coming in, and I'm
Right.
going to do whatever I want." So, take it seriously is my view.
Absolutely. So where can people buy your book, Revelation, if they want to purchase your book?
Yeah, well, Revelation is available at all major online bookstores. Obviously Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I don't know if you have Waterstones in the States, but all sorts of online bookstores. It's in Kindle format as well, so you can get it immediately in online format. Or you can walk into any bookstore and just say Revelation by Nick Pease. And I know people have done that in the States and got it very quickly. I think somebody got it the very next day. So, there are wholesalers in the States who already have it, who will rush it to you. And anybody who does buy it, I really hope you enjoy it. I hope you're uplifted by it. I hope it poses questions to you and makes you think, yeah, you've always thought those things. And now here it is in book format. Please enjoy it. Please be uplifted by it. And I wish you peace, love, and happiness.
All right. So if anybody wants to kind of follow along with you and keep up with if you're going to write any more books or anything, how can people find you online?
I think probably the best is my Instagram, which is Pease_Nick. So PEASE_Nick. That's probably the best way to communicate with me. I post every now and then about whatever to do with the book, and I keep that Instagram account mainly for Revelation. But that's where they can find me. I'm very open. I'm very happy to share my knowledge and experiences with people. I don't try to preach or want people to believe things purely because I say it, as I mentioned earlier. But if people want to ask me questions or just share their experiences or ask any advice or anything, I'm very happy to share my knowledge with them.
All right. But sounds good. Well, Nick, I really appreciate you coming on the show. Everybody, check out his book, Revelation. You can get it anywhere books are sold. And it sounds like a very interesting book. So give it a shot.
Well, thank you so much, Brian. It's been a pleasure being on your show.
Absolutely. All right. We'll catch everybody next time. Thank you again, Nick.
Thank you. Take care.